Electric Cafe.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. In this video I'm going to answer some questions that were submitted to me. A couple weeks ago I asked for some questions from some people I know and people on Facebook and stuff like that, and just it wasn't necessarily questions for me specifically. It could have been questions for somebody like me who maybe would be a collector, or somebody who maybe they know something about me. I DJ sometimes. I run a label sometimes. I write sometimes. Different aspects of everything involved with music. Of maybe a little bit of my background, or maybe just general questions about music or whatever they might be. Just ask for some questions, and I wanted to highlight 10 questions in this video and answer them. And I'll probably do a part 2 because there's a few questions that I have left over, and I'm sure some ones might come up from this question or from this video. So hopefully this might encourage more conversation on my channel, more interaction in the comments section, or just general conversation about music and things that I'm kind of interested, or maybe you're interested in, and maybe you want somebody's opinion that you don't know really that well about something related to music, or it could be really anything. I guess I'm pretty opinionated when it comes to music, and it's something that's I think natural to be very opinionated, because there's such an artistic side and there's such a business side to music, and often they clash, and they've been clashing more than ever before, because I think that they're almost in some ways they're just like married to each other now, and it's such a, maybe it's because of social media, maybe it's because of the internet, just the advance of information and things like that has gone over the last 30 years, has just kind of made to the point where, it's almost like they're intertwined so much, and I think the best we can do is separate the business and the music as much as we can, so we can enjoy the music, right? Although there's some really fun stuff and interesting things, and also enjoyable things about the business side when you think of like record stores and manufacturing music and getting your first record on vinyl and collecting and stuff. There's so many great things about physical music and the business side of it, because also the business side of it is collecting and things like that, right? So it's not all bad, but I think when you think about the music side and the artistic side, I do feel like it's important to keep them separate as much as you can. So the first question comes from Mark Anthony from the YouTube channel Mark Anthony's Picks. Mark Anthony does a great job of highlighting a lot of great electronic music that he's into, a lot of records that he's purchasing, some of his favorite from the past and present. He does a really good job on his channel. You should definitely check out his channel if you like electronic music, like house and techno and dub techno and things like that. He submitted the first question, so thanks, Mark. I'll put the questions up here so you guys can see them. So the first question is, which subgenre of electronic music will be the strongest in 2026 quality-wise? Obviously, this is going to be different for everybody because it's opinion-related question, but I'm really interested in the evolution of darkwave. I really enjoy the dark side of electronic music. Like when I think of like darker ambient or darker techno or industrial music and things like that, I really enjoy the darkwave sound, the potential of the genre, because you have EBM, which is a genre which is like 40 years old, which is very tied to industrial, but it's a little bit more of a groove, and so it has influences in new beat and then also in techno. And with darkwave, it kind of blends in a little bit of synthwave and maybe even vaporwave or synth pop, and sort of blends sort of a Italo disco almost. There's so many things that can be influenced into the darkwave genre. I just love the sound of it because it's kind of like, it's almost like the new wave or new synth pop to me, but it's darker. It's more, I think it's sexier. It's more, more melodic. It's edgy. It can be really powerful. I've done a lot of darkwave reviews on my channel in recent months, and I've really enjoyed finding a lot of good new wave. A lot of good darkwave artists, especially in the past, probably like 5 years. I think I first started hearing some darkwave probably in like late 2008, 2009. And in that particular year's sort of cold wave or yeah, cold wave was starting in like 2003, 2004. I was starting to hear some cold wave, and then that was kind of an evolution of post punk, and sort of dark wave started pretty much when synth pop or synth wave started, and sort of vaporwave and stuff like that, like 2008, 2009. And so I just love that blend because also the great thing with dark wave is you have the live atmosphere, the live. So it can be played by a band, right? So there's a live aspect that I like. It's not just something you can DJ or something that's, a band can actually be up there. It could be a singer up there, somebody playing keyboards. So the dark wave sound lends itself to being a type of style, that can be done live with multiple members and kind of give that live feel a little bit more than I feel like electronic needs, especially with like touring and playing out and stuff like that. It's great to go hear a DJ and play and stuff like that in bars and things like that, but I think for like live venues and stuff like that, darkwave can be that style of music that can really kind of take the live experience to another level when it comes to electronic music, as does synth pop and new wave and even industrial. But I feel like I'm really excited personally about the evolution of darkwave. A couple other genres that I think that are kind of making a comeback in a little bit of ways is I've heard some really good IDM, and I think in retrospect, IDM people that have done the music or kind of looking back to the past of IDM and maybe what are the misses in the genre, and maybe that I think most people would think maybe the jittery beats and things like that maybe didn't date that well, so maybe they're kind of staying away from that, but still kind of a resurgence in that sound I feel like is coming. So I like that, and that's a little bit more towards the IDM style than the ambient techno. The ambient techno I feel is still fairly strong because it's so niche, so niche in the respect of the genre. So I would say dark wave and IDM. Then probably the third genre that I'm kind of most excited about, and I think of the quality, is there's some really good field recordings and ambient music coming out continually. I'm just really fascinated by there's so many artists out there that are up and coming and that are really excited about doing ambient music. And some of the ones I'm really enjoying lately have been the ones that are a little bit more touch of field recording, but a little bit more landscape. Like it puts you almost in I think a lot of times like ambient music kind of gives you like moods and stuff like that. So it could be a somber, it could be a classical thing, it could be a spacey sort of ambient. But I've been hearing some really good ones that sort of put you in a landscape. Like it could be in the fields, or it could be on a hill, or it could be outside a ghostly like a haunted house or something like that. There's so many like there's sounds that sort of incorporate nature and into electronic music and sort of ambient music, and I really love that feeling of it transporting you to a familiar side. A lot of times I'm into this like spacey ambient, and that's kind of grandiose and kind of okay. This is space music, and it's kind of but if it can get more exact, and you're put on Mars or you're put on Jupiter, and you kind of think about what's going on that particular planet, right? It's kind of the same idea. Like you're being transposed to the lakeside, next to some willows and trees, and there's rolling hills and stuff like that. Like and it's a little bit icy, almost on a winter's day. Like there's kind of these pictures that you kind of come up in your mind, and then that music kind of puts you there. I think that's fascinating because you don't really know what to expect. You might know what to expect from the cover art or something like that, or maybe the names of the tracks, but you start listening and you instantly be transported to that particular scenery, and I think that's fascinating for ambient music. So I'm really excited, as always, about the evolution of ambient music and how detailed it can be. So my second question comes from Joseph Burnap. Joseph is a digital creator, does a lot of digital art, and he runs the Dark Music Net forum, and which is a kind of community that highlights a lot of electronic music events in the area, and pretty much all kinds of conversational things about darker styles of music, electronic music, everything from industrial music to goth rock, etc. His question is, what do you think makes vinyl such a sought-after medium in regards to music? Do you feel like the sound quality and format will continue to compete with digital music long-term? So that's a really good question. When I think of the reasons why I liked vinyl and why I kind of stuck with it through the lean period, and it had a lot to do with being a DJ and the tactile feel of vinyl. I love playing vinyl, and I love all the aspects of it, and I love to DJ with it. Even probably more so than CDs and digital music. It's just kind of a feel for it, and I think when you see the grooves, and it's something that you can kind of get into a little bit more physically than something that's digital. But also, of course, the artwork and going to record stores and the things that's involved with records are a little bit more personal and more enjoyable than just buying a digital file online. So that's kind of all those things kind of go hand in hand with vinyl, I believe. When I think of like younger people kind of getting into vinyl, they're really liking music and they're seeing all this vinyl out there and they're kind of new to like purchasing music and they're just getting into music themselves. People that are like 10 years old all the way till 20. I hear that they like to they're into music and they're interested in buying music, and I always like to ask a few questions, especially if I know that they are sort of looking at buying vinyl or getting into vinyl. I definitely take an interest in that because I want to see if I can help them sort of navigate through the, I guess, maybe some of the pitfalls of collecting or getting interested in vinyl. And I think buying vinyl for the wrong reasons can really, like any kind of hobby, if you're not really into it and you're really just doing it because your friends are doing it or because you feel like you need to or you feel like you have to enjoy the music, then I don't know if that hobby or that enjoyment will stick long term because I'm such a big supporter of buying any format. It's whatever format you're into, and sometimes that format can be dependent on how much you make. I mean, if I'm not well off and I'm not have extra money, I'm not going to be buying vinyl because I want to hear new music and I want to check out some of the great new music. So I mean, I would go digital if that was the way. So I think a lot of it with prices of physical music and stuff like that, which can be kind of high sometimes. I think it's more about discovering music than really about any format. That's just me personally because I want to stick to the most important thing in music, which I think is enjoying music. And there's a lot of great things about enjoying collecting of it and purchasing music and stuff like that. That stuff can be a lot of fun, but I also think about it can be a lot of pressure for a lot of these younger people getting into music. I mean, not everybody has a couple $100 to throw around every month to buy 5, 10, 15, 20 records. And so, and then also I get into their stereo systems and what they're playing their records on and what they're enjoying their music on. So I try to coach some of them along the way to maybe a better sounding system or more enjoyable or more intricate or something that will protect their vinyl and not hurt it. And so there's all those kind of things that have to do with like the median that I think about. But I think when it comes down to is like what people really want to own their music now. I think there's been somewhat of a slow backlash to all the spending on music and buying music and there's really nothing to show for it. Can you imagine how much people spent on MP3 ringtones and then they changed their phone and lost those ringtones or just moved on from it and lost all that money? All those people that and paid for MP3s and then MP4s come out and then they got, you know what I mean? It's just, I stayed clear of that because I knew I foresaw the issues with buying digital. And so I've never been one to buy digital files because I knew it would be okay. Well, here's the next thing come out, just like they did with all the formats. I mean, when you think of even videos, I went to reel to reels, then VHSs, beta, Laserdisc, DVDs, Blu-rays, 4K. So if you're collecting, what's the shelf life of that? What's the time life of collecting that media and it really being supported? So I knew that was always a big part of the issues of digital, but I think you're starting to see a lot of people that want to own their vinyl. They want to have it in their hand. They want to appreciate the art. They also want to support the artist as well. and they want to own their music. And I think that's the best thing that you can do for the business side of vinyl, is wanting to own it so you can support the artist and enjoy it on a physical level as much as you can. And then the second part of that question, do you feel sound quality and format will continue to compete with digital music long term? I think there's advantages to both. I don't necessarily see them competing for each other. I just see as them offering different formats, just the way we did when we were growing up, and they offered, cassettes and vinyl and CDs. I don't really see them competing with each other. I think there's advantages in both. Of course, you know, with digital music, if you're traveling, if you're on the road, if you're a DJ going out and you can't carry your records, like, there's advantages to digital and there's advantages to vinyl. One advantage to vinyl is ear fatigue for me. Like, when I go out and hear a all vinyl DJ play for 6-7 hours, and he might be playing it at a super high volume, I don't get ear fatigue because it's an analog. If it's a digital DJ and they're playing, all kinds of MP4s and WAV files from different releases, you're more apt to getting ear fatigue and hurting your ears because it's a digital waveform. And it's a little bit more abrasive. It can be more abrasive. It can be more just harsher on your ears in general. I tend to, in a live atmosphere like DJing, as far as like a DJ club atmosphere, I like vinyl playing better because it's just nicer on your ears over at loud volumes and over a long certain amount of time. So again, there's advantages to both formats. I always talk about the collectability of vinyl and just owning your music and supporting your music on there. I feel like it's better to support artists on their physical music than even their digital music. But I don't know if they're really competing with each other. I just see as the artist or label offering more than one format for whoever's interested in purchasing or listening to their music on that particular format. So that's just my thoughts when it comes to digital competing with vinyl. The third question comes from John Beltran. He asked, does the character of your favorite DJs and producers matter to you? I think it does matter to me. I think especially when it comes to the integrity and the way that they're presenting their music. There is that old adage of you don't want to meet your heroes, and sometimes that can be true. When you see the reality or maybe the person that they are, maybe they don't. There's things about them that you sort of get to know, and you sort of talk to them on a personal basis, and maybe that kind of ruins your enjoyment a little bit of their music just because you have little issues, or maybe they're bigger issues with that particular artist and maybe what they think or what their background is, or maybe it's their political views or things like that. Like, it's such a slippery slope. And so I do think it's important to know their character, because I think with certain styles of music, especially with electronic music, I feel like, that they're really true to their sound as far as, like, case in point, like, let's say they're really into industrial music, right? There's almost like a certain integrity that I feel like they should have when it comes to them making industrial music that I feel like they should have. Not that I feel that they need to be wearing leather or their look or anything particularly about them physically needs to, but I do feel like they need to sort of be in that, to be true to the style of music. I do feel like, it does help to be true to who they are as far as like their involvement in the music and the history of that music. It's almost hard to explain. I wouldn't say if they made shoegaze music they have to be all sad and droopy and stuff like that, or have some sort of depression or something like that. But I do feel like they do have to be tied in sort of to do the best of that style. I feel like they need to be very involved in that style, because I think some styles of music are very, just very beloved, and you to really do that style well, you almost have to live and breathe it, if that makes sense. And maybe that's a little bit too much to expect, from somebody who's just making music. But sometimes, as a fan of that style, and you really like a style of music, you really wish the person, the people making that music are really into their music. That's got to be, important, but I know that's not really tied to the question of the character, but I feel like in how they represent themselves is really important to their character. But as far as like, again, the integrity of how they present themselves is, I think, the most important thing that I think of when I think of this question. And, a lot of that is the business side. A case in point, I had an artist that I really enjoyed, and I found out he was selling his own records for like 5 times the price. And when I asked him about why he's selling his own records, which were brand new reissues of the same record that was, being highly priced, or being priced very high, his answer was, because other people are doing it. And I don't know if I felt, I didn't feel good about that. Like somebody charging people a higher price than their own music just because other people doing it. I would expect a better integrity in that, and sort of them cutting out that, and sort of being the person that wants to get their music into more people's hands by making it more affordable. Like, I get every artist has to make their money to survive, and there's certainly a margin in there that's reasonable, but just charging 3 to 5 times higher for what you would normally charge because other people are doing it, I don't think that's good integrity. And so when I think of character of an artist, or character of an artist, I think of probably the business side of it. That would be an issue that I would have with an artist. There's probably not too much else. It's really the business side I think of when I think of the integrity. But the integrity and character kind of go hand in hand with me. The character of a favorite DJ. The only thing I think about when I think of character of a DJ, I think of playing music that they love, and not playing music that they feel that they have to play, or they have to adapt. I think there's a certain amount of adaptability that DJs do, but I do feel like any proper DJ, and if I think of the character of that DJ, they need to play music that they love, and also turn people on to new stuff, different styles of music, or stuff that they're into as well. Like, the character of a DJ has to be important, otherwise they have nothing to say. That's just my thoughts on DJing, and that's what when I see up and coming like DJs play and they're so into the performance part of it, like, that's all well and good, learning how to do special things and effects, and learning how to beat match and stuff. That's all part of it, a big part of it. But there's also a part of it of getting to know music and enjoying music, and your knowledge about music, and discovering music, and having a voice. And that all comes from your knowledge of music. Like learning syncing and tips that are done like digitally and things like that, is not too hard. Like, that stuff most people can learn. I think the important thing is the love for music, and to have a voice. And to have a voice in music, you got to have some knowledge in music. Question number 4 is a 2-part question. It's from Dan Snow. Dan Snow is the owner and operator of Anarchy Post, which is a post-production facility in Burbank, California. Me and Dan used to work together in the late 90s, early 2000s at a post-production facility in Studio City. And the first part of his question is, I have a hard time getting into emo music that is from another generation, or the kids younger than me. Do you have a hard time reviewing or appreciating music from the generation maybe 10 to 15 years younger? I think most people will prefer the music that they like. So if you do have a hard time getting into music that's mostly from a little bit, newer or younger people, I think that's pretty natural for anybody in the evolution of styles of music. I can think of, like, I put myself in listening to electronic music, for example. When I think about 35 years ago, I think about more sequenced music, more beat machines, more programmed music, right? How they sequence tracks and how they program things. We're a little bit different than on now computers placing beats and placing sounds and things like that. So the process of making electronic music, for the most part, is a little bit different than how it used to be. Maybe that's the case with emo music as well. So I can certainly see that certain structures of genres being different, and you're not liking as much, or maybe it's the way that they go about how they make the music, or maybe there's different instruments that they use, maybe there's different attitude, so I think that's a big reason why we do get more into the bands that are a little bit more nostalgic and sort of blending that with the new, versus somebody who's trying to push the genre to a new place, even though that's commendable, and we want that. At the same time, you kind of want that balance of nostalgic, because I think everybody's, liking a certain genre. And when, 30, 40 years ago, there was only so many genres. And so now there's so many different genres, you get so exact. And if you're so exact in a specific genre, well, I like goth rock from 1983 to 1987. Well, you know what I mean? That's such a closed window. Like, what are you going to like that's new? So but I see that all the time, and I certainly feel like that as well. And I think, there's so much good music out there. I don't think that's any problem. I don't think there's a issue with that. I think it's just a preference thing. But I think it's important to be well rounded, and I'm sure I know Dan. He's pretty well rounded, and so but I can see that kind of frustration as well. That you kind of want to get into it. You want to embrace it. You want to not be that. Like I feel like sometimes like that old person, that get off my lawn type person, or this isn't as good as it used to be, but like there you find what you do like. That's all I can really say if I put myself in that perspective. Is I try to find the meeting point, or something that I do appreciate in that. Because I think you're not going to appreciate everything about it. I mean, it's just part about being into music and being a little bit of a music. You're critiquing it, you're enjoying it, you want it to be the best it can be, but there's certain things about the newer music that you're not going to like. Maybe it's overly digitally mastered. Maybe there's a mistake in the recording process that just puts you off. I mean, there's albums like Depeche Mode's Playing the Angel. I can't even play that album in a row because it's so freaking loud. Like, it's just the worst mastered album I've ever heard in my life. It's so loud and abrasive. It's just really hard to listen to in a row. And so, that something like that ruins a lot of the enjoyment of the music on there. So it could be something technical with it, especially knowing Dan comes from a technical side of music as well. So I certainly see that. But I think we can all just kind of, sort of adapt and sort of get into what you do like and say the good things that you do like. But I feel you. It's hard to get into some of the newer music. I mean, electronic music, when I think of the last 10, 15, 20 years, like EDM and dubstep, like some of the sounds are really abrasive, and I don't like a lot of the EDM sounds, and I don't like a lot of the dubstep stuff. I thought it was like almost sounded like transformer music or sound effect music. But I generally like electronic music that's smoother, and more warmer. So a lot of the more abrasive stuff, more stuff that's in your face, the stuff that's doesn't really have much deepness. That's the big thing for me. Like, I want electronic music to make me think as much as I want it to make me dance or make me say, "Wow, that's really cool." Like, I don't think there's that much deepness on a lot of dubstep. Unfortunately, I'm sure there's some stuff that's evolved, but when it was becoming big and EDM was coming big, it was kind of like, I think of like EDM music as like the festival music. It's like the pop music of electronic music. Like, I don't really get into EDM, and if I was to take this question and sort of put it towards an electronic fan or like myself, me getting into EDM music, it's really hard. It's really hard. I try to find the good in it, because, and there's sometimes I have to write about music that I don't necessarily like and sort of find the good in it, and that's hard too. So I don't know if there's really any particular answer for this question, but I just try to find the enjoyment in everything, and yeah. And then the second part of this question: how much of your musical taste is really shaped from when we are between the ages of 13 and 23? Wow, this is a tough question. I think you guessed 80%. I would think 70 or 80% is about right. I think, I think everything evolves, right? All the styles evolve, but I think the foundation of what you like is I think that's fair to say. I would probably say as low as 50%, But if I was to guess, I'd probably say 70, 80%. I think it's closer to 100% than it is to 50%. But it really depends how much you're into hearing the new music. And I think I'm pretty I think I'm pretty well balanced between new music and older music, trying to find it. So I think I'm probably 75%, like right in the middle. I would think 100% would be you're stuck in your ways, and then 0% is you're not stuck in your ways, and you're always looking out for what's new, and you're not really you're not really influenced by your background. Like that would be the extreme. So I wouldn't say 50% is, even though that's right in the middle. I'd probably say a little closer to 75% because we are tied to the experiences that we have from when we're 13 to 23. Like when you ask any 50-year-old what's their favorite concert, probably 75% of the time they're going to say something in between they were 13 and 23. So the live experience and going out and meeting people and that freshness and that newness of going to concerts and the excitingness and everything involved with friends and stuff like that, it's going to be a little bit more towards those experiences when you're younger as well. So that's going to be a big pull from it as well. Question number 5 comes from an old friend of mine, old high school friend, DJ friend of mine, Jorge Jimenez. He asked me, what continues to motivate you staying true to the music you grew up with, especially with electronic music, which now has been oversaturated by mainstream artists. When I think of staying true to the music that you grew up with, I mean those are your foundations, right? That's almost like your family. You have extended family, you get to know different people, you get to experience different things, you get to meet new people, but you have a foundation of music taste and music that you're into and styles of music that you're into, and I don't think that ever goes away. And so that always influences what you're going to like and what you're going to get into. And when I think of electronic music, I think there's always a sort of an underground style of the certain styles of electronic music that I like to follow and that I still stay true to. And I think there's always a DIY kind of a punk attitude a little bit in electronic music. There's definitely a underground way of releasing your music and there's always things like that. Some people might think it's like marketing and some people might think it's passé, but there is an underground style of electronic music always out there to gravitate to. One that's maybe pushing the buttons, maybe one that's pushing the genre forward, whatever it is, or a certain attitude towards the music and how they release it, maybe the artwork, things like that, maybe their performance live. There's always going to be like an underground style of somebody new trying to do things their way. And I think that's to have that balance of that foundation of what you're into and also being fresh and being receptive of that is really important in keeping the underground strong, so you don't necessarily, I don't know, I wouldn't say pay attention, but you have the mainstream artists kind of doing their own thing, and that's all well and good, but there's a certain level of underground that you stay true to, and I think it's almost hard to put into words, but I think when you're really into a style of music and who is doing it the right way and you feel like is presenting themselves the right way. Like that all kind of ties back to the other questions that I had about character. Question number 3 was about character of a DJ or an artist or appreciating generations after you, like their music. Like that all kind of ties to this question. And I think if you really love music and you really have a good foundation of it, like you're able to navigate through the obstacles of staying true to the styles of music or appreciating ones that need appreciating or need more support or you feel that are different than others. Like there's a lot of different levels to that kind of question, and staying true to the music I grew up with is they never steered me wrong. I can still think of like The Cure as an underground artist. I still think of Depeche Mode as an underground artist. I still think of Pet Shop Boys as an underground pop duo. I think of New Order as an underground dance artist. I still get those feelings of artists that I felt with like 40 years ago. I still feel like Skinny Puppy is a very underrated live performer, one of the best who ever did it, one of the best of whoever put on performances. So, there's always that level of staying true to what really got you into these genres, and so you can feel like you can navigate your way through of what's coming out. Question number 6 comes from BV Dub. And I got a chance to interview him last month for for Juno Online, and I asked him if he could ask me one question in return for this particular video, and he asked me this question. It's what's the one memory you cling to when you need to remember what it's all about? The one moment you'll never forget that can somehow override years or decades of despair when they pile on and help you remember why you love this music and you'll never stop. Ooh, I'll try to shorten this question to put it up here. But what's the one memory you cling to when you remember what it's all about? It's discovering music for me, and so it's not just one single memory. It's always discovering new music. It's discovering a new record by an artist I already know. So it's sometimes the hardest questions I feel like can be answered with the most simplest answer. I think as far as the one thing that I always come back to is the enjoyment of music, and that first time you hear a song that wows you, and luckily when you dig and dig and dig for music, old and new, I think you'll have a lot of memories like that, because I think you're gonna find music that you love and that you have that moment with, and so that's the moment that always makes it worth it for me when I think of all the issues and why I spent all this money on music and why I spent all this time on music and why I do this channel and why I talk about music and why it's been my favorite hobby for almost 45 years now, ever since I can remember. Like, it comes back to the first memory that I've ever had with music. I had a Queen record and I had a Blondie record. I've told this story probably before on my channel, but I had a Fisher Price turntable. I was 4 or 5 years old. I had my older sister's Blondie record and my older sister's Queen record. The Queen record was what's that one hit that none of the Queen people like? Crazy little thing called Loved. Put on that record and was kind of Put on the Blondie record as Parallel Lines, and just blown away by Blondie. It was like punk attitude. It was like disco. It was edgy. It had new wave in it. It had some hip hop in it, right? Like with Rapture, and so Blondie was everything. It opened up. It laid such a foundation for all the music that I would like before. I mean, almost all the music that I like could be tied to one album, because I was lucky enough to hear that one particular album. But even in a bigger picture is I liked electronic music and dance music more so than traditional rock music. Like, rock music just didn't do anything for me. And ever since that one choice, ever since that one, forever was my journey towards electronic music set because of that one record, and just evolved into there. Although I certainly appreciate rock music, and my favorite band of all time is The Cure, and they're a rock band. But I've always delved more more fascinated by the more atmospheric and electronic music side, and I just felt like it was more futuristic and more edgy. And I could go on to the reasons why I like electronic music more than rock, for a 20-minute video. But it just kind of ties back to the reason what it makes it all worth it is that discovery of music and finding great music, and that memory. I continue to have that memory hundreds and hundreds of, or if not thousands and thousands of time. It almost happens like that on every record. It'll happen like once or twice, like a song or two that might blow me away. I would say every couple of months, even though as much music as I have and as much music as I listen to, there's a couple songs every week that I'm like really kind of make me feel like this is the reason why I'm doing it. This is the reason why it makes it all worth it. It's that discovery and that enjoyment of music. And there's different levels of enjoying music, and there's different ways to enjoy music. I think that, like, when I think of the different formats, I don't think of like the collectability of it. I think of the different ways that you can listen to music and it can wow you. Like, recording something on reel to reel and playing it back and hearing it on an all analog system. That's like a wow moment. Recording it and doing an extended version on a tape and making like a remix of it myself. that's a way to wow me with it. Hearing it for the first time when I buy it on record. I mean, it's just there's so many ways that you can just be wowed by music, and it can be even with different formats and different speakers. I get I get blown away when I listen to certain people's stereo systems, and I play something that I already know. Like that could be a level of just being like, wow, sounds like something I've never even heard before, even though it's my favorite song. I have a memory of like that, and I'll put a picture of these particular speakers that my friend's dad made. We were at his house in like 2000, I think it was 2007 or 2008, and he invited me to his house in his basement. And he said you got to hear my dad's speakers. He made these. He says bring some CDs that you really like, because he didn't have I think he had a turntable, but I didn't necessarily. I don't know why I brought CDs, but I didn't maybe think of it at the time. But he was just like, bring some CDs and I'll play it. Maybe he didn't have a turntable. I don't know, but I would think, knowing how much he was into music, I would think he had a turntable too. But so so I brought these. I brought Autek in Kunabola, which is an album I know through and through. One of my all-time favorite electronic music albums. I took to that and I played it, and I shit you not, it was. I played my favorite song on there, which is probably Eggshell. And I played it on there, and it was like I was hearing it for the first time. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done that. Took a song that you really knew really well, and you took it to somebody's hi-fi stereo system, and you played it for the first time, and you heard things you never heard before. That's how I was on that. And so after that, it really excelled my interest in hi-fi systems after that, because he made those speakers. It wowed me. There was like one 6-inch subwoofer on that speaker. The wood was made for. He imported the wood from. It was Kona wood. He imported from Hawaii to make those speakers. It wasn't like the type of speakers that you would see and you're like, wow, those are crazy looking. There's like, it's a 15-inch woofer, and there's a mid and a couple highs. There's a horn tweeter. All you could see was one speaker. So I guess everything was inside of it. I only got a chance to hear it that one time. But the box, the enclosure, you can't really. I don't know if you can really tell from the picture off the top, but it was about 5.5 feet, and it was thin. It was probably about this wide, but it was probably about 4 or 5 feet deep. I should be like this, but just an amazing speaker setup, and I was wow. And so I was just like, so that's again another way to discover music and appreciate it on another level, to where you're just like, wow, this is what makes it all worth it. So not only is it different music, different ways, different formats, and different systems you can hear it on that can wow you in another way. So there's so many different levels of appreciation when it comes to music, and that could, I guess, that could even go into artwork and getting a reissue of something that you really valued in the first time, and it makes it all worth it. Or maybe the artist signed a copy for you, that makes it all worth it. So there's so many different ways. Question number 7 comes from Josh Culva, old friend of mine from Discogs forums back in the day. He used to go by Mr. Culva, and a really good guy, and we often talk a lot about music. And he has a question for me. He said, have you been to any raves since you've been to the East Coast? If so, which was the biggest one you went to? Who played? What happened? And what were some highlights? When I moved to the DC area in 2004, I was, starting to try to play out somewhere and, DJ out some places. So I did go out a little bit during like the first couple of years out there, but I'm sad to say that I don't really go to much, DJ events as far as like clubs and things like that in the last like maybe almost 20 years. So I know that's kind of sad to say, but it's always been like that. I've never really been that one to really go out a lot and see a lot of DJs play, or really go to raves and things like that. I've always kind of been kind of a homebody. And I've always been a collector of music and buying music and stuff like that. So I've always, when I had free time and things like that, I always wanted to play music that I had and go hear a new album at home in the comforts of my own home. I can remember as much as when I was like 20 years old and I first moved out on my own. And I moved to the Valley, and this is San Fernando Valley, and I didn't really know anybody except for people that I went to school with, because I had just moved to a new area, and it was only about an hour away from where I grew up from. But I didn't know too many people, so there was not too much I could do on the weekends. And I was going to school through the weekdays, and then on the weekend, I had some free time. And my idea of going out was going to the record store, and then I would go to like Fat Burger and grab a burger, and then grab a 40 and go to my house and just have a beer and listen to my new music. Like that was kind of my going out. Like it was kind of always like that ever since I was buying music. Like I've never really been one to kind of go out and see the scene or go to a lot of venues and things like that. I will say I have gone to a good amount, but I would say I was more on the homebody than really the kind of going out type of uh, electronic music fan. But I think of maybe the biggest rave that I went to when I came out here was probably 2006. I went to there was a club called Nation that was pretty popular in DC area, and it was kind of closing down at the time. Maybe it was 2005, but I had went to with my girlfriend. I went to go see Adam X, the famous, obviously New York DJ, and I saw him do a live show down in Baltimore, and then we were kind of friends from Discogs, and he jumped in my car and we drove up to DC, and we went to, and he was headlining at Nation. It was Nigel Richard was from 611 Records was playing right before him, and then then Adam went on, and so me and my girlfriend were in the DJ booth there, and I guess there was a couple thousand people there. I don't know. It's hard to say. That was probably the biggest one I went to. But a funny story about that particular night, we were kind of all we kind of all just got there, and there was this kind of rave kid that was kind of going around and kind of being all lovey dovey, and he wanted to know if I wanted some angel. What did he say? He wanted to know if I wanted some pixie dust. Yeah, that's what it was. And I was like, is that some kind of drug or something like that? And I was like, no, I'm okay. And then I saw him go to my girlfriend, and I guess he asked her the same thing. And the next thing I know, he's sort of putting things. I thought he was going to drop some LSD on her eyes or something like that, because he had like some things over her eye. I guess he was putting some like glitter on her eye. So I just jumped and I was like, "What are you doing?" And my girlfriend was just like, "He's just putting glitter on my eyes." I was like, "Oh, I thought he meant pixie dust with some kind of like acid in my eyes or something like that." I don't know what he was trying to do. It was also hard to hear, but that was kind of a funny memory. And so that was kind of towards the end of sort of those kind of rave kitties, like being all dressed up, and that was kind of like the last of those rave days, was seeing people all dressed up like you know, just way out outfits and stuff like that. He called himself the resident dancer. Like you would have resident DJ or something like that. He was the resident dancer. Go figure. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't go to. I don't. The last 15 years, I've gone to some clubs here and there, but nothing big, nothing really worth mentioning. I don't think. Question number 8 comes from Salvador at Sequential. Salvador does a great job online. His Mixcloud, and I believe it's also on SoundCloud. He has a live series. He has DJs. He has his own mixes up there. He's been doing some great stuff when it comes to sharing a lot of the music that we grew up with. A lot of great electronic music. Definitely check out his channel if you get a chance to. And really nice gentleman. So Salvador's question was about COVID and the original music coming out of that, and how he feels that. I'll have to paraphrase this question because it's kind of a long question, but he felt that there'd be a lot more original music and a lot more interesting music coming out of the COVID times than what happened. And he felt like it was kind of stagnant and kind of same old, same old. And I can. That's a difficult question. This is a question I probably thought more about than any question on this list. And I think there's slow advances. I don't think there's bigger advances in music than there was 30, 35 years ago. I think it's like small advances and small things that we can kind of hold on to and appreciate and feel that are different. They're not necessarily like bigger, like wow moments that happen. There's a lot more people making electronic music, so there's a lot more to sift through and a lot more to listen to. And I think everybody kind of takes a different type of approach in a type of situation that's where there's like a, it's a world issue or a health issue or a disease or a virus spreading. Some people that might not be really inspired. Some people might be fearful, as much as being sort of locked down and being inspired by that moment. There's certainly I feel like a lot of artists are probably not focused on music on that. So I could see I could see a little bit of that in there as well. Like I would think if I was making music during a time of like famine or some kind of world issue like COVID, I don't know if I would be that inspired to make music. But I can see on the other hand, maybe I would be a little bit more inspired to make, music during that period, make it more meaningful. So it's hard to say that there wasn't or there was more impactful music during that time. But I can see where you're coming back. But I think that's more his particular opinion or a opinion that a lot of people could share, and I could totally see that point of view as well. But I think one thing that I always go back to is, if you're a DJ, you're always continually digging deep for great music, and sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean you're digging deep in that particular what's going on and what in this time right now. Like sometimes you have to go back to the back and find a new side genre or a new label that you never knew about or a new artist that you didn't know about and sort of discover music that way, and maybe that'll turn you on to some new music that way. I mean, I can't harp on enough how important it is to be well-rounded in music, because there's certain styles of music that go through lulls. Like if I was just into techno, I could totally see how the resurgence in 2009 to 2013, that particular rejuvenation in techno was really exciting. And then it really, the last 10 years has got really stagnant. And so, if I was really into techno, I'd be really bummed for the last 10 years. But thankfully, I'm into a lot of 15, 20, 30 different styles to where, okay, that I'm not really hearing anything great in that particular style of music. Okay, let me, I'm checking all the other ones too. Okay, this one's more interesting right now. So I go more towards that genre for now, and maybe it will come back around. So, I think when I think of this question, I think of the enjoyment of music, because I feel it in Salvador's question of it feeling like it's kind of stagnant sometimes, and sometimes you have to dig to the past. I think there's always things to discover in music, and sometimes it just has to be older music. Question number 9 comes from Gabriel Mendez. He asked me, why are there less music critics? This is a funny one. I don't know if there's really less music critics. I think there are times when people don't give their honest opinion because they don't want to hurt people's feelings. Like I get that they don't want to hurt their connections, they don't want to hurt their business contacts, they don't want to hurt the business side of it. Like there's a lot of reasons why somebody would suppress their opinion on somebody's music. I think but there's also the extent of that to where people can be really brutal and really piss somebody off, or it's just somebody's opinion, right? At the same time, it's a slippery slope when you really. I would imagine you're an artist, you're making music, you're really tied to it, and somebody comes along and just says it sucks. I can see how that could hurt your feelings. At the same time, I think it's important to be honest, but there's a way that I'm learning as I get older of a proper way of doing that. Because I can tell you, I used to be one of the most brutal persons on the internet. You go look at Discogs forums, I was one of the most brutal honesty, because there was part of me that I was so protective of the underground and what we appreciated and how fascinating those times were, and how great and how the music was so underground, and it was so dedicated to everything involved in that. It wasn't done to make money. It wasn't done to be a commercial on TikTok. It wasn't done to be a short on YouTube and go viral. Like it was done for the right reasons. And so you wanted to protect that sort of that idea of what electronic music stood for, and the integrity in the genre, and that sort you wanted to protect it for the future generations to be able to experience it in the same way. But it's hard not to keep your mouth shut, about your likeness of a particular song, like whether you like it or not. It's just it's hard to keep your mouth shut. If somebody asks your opinion about something, it's just sometimes you just want to say it's just not for me and just leave it at that. Question number 10 comes from Kenneth Graham. He talks about meeting people at a record store was really important in the 70s and 80s for meeting like-minded people and getting recommendations and also sharing music with people. How do music lovers connect differently and get that same level of impact? This is a really good question. It really had me thinking. Well, it's one thing I liked about the forums of music, because you're there for music, right? You're there to talk specifically about a particular topic, and it's a specific topic, right? It could be about something in general, but for the most part, it's a pretty specific question, and so you talk to other people about that particular question. That's the one thing I really liked about the forums. That's probably why the Discogs forums and other forums in like the 98 to like 2010 period was really impactful, and a lot of people really enjoyed it because it was very direct with like-minded people. Like, the internet was a time where, before social media, where you went to be interested in the music or whatever the discussion was, you went to that particular forum or you went to look for that information, where social media is just, it's blasted in your face, right? That's the difference of why social media has turned off a lot of people onto being on the internet, is because they're thrown in your face and you may or may not have an opinion of it, where if you have a certain opinion, you go to that, and then social media is like, okay, well, what's your opinion on this? And it's just like, oh, okay, well then, in a way, it's kind of spur of the moment, like, what's your opinion on it? And if you're not really into electronic music, for example, obviously you're going to give a negative opinion about it, or say it's not for me, or what is this, or whatever. So, you're not going to look specifically for a topic that you're interested in. It's just going to be blasted at you. And so, like, we have to find those places where they are. And I don't know if Reddit's that place. It seems like a combination of that. I one of the idea that I had, on a smaller level, is the original idea of Electronic Cafe for me was I wanted to start a record store, but also a place where it was casual conversation, where people can have a cup of coffee and play a record and look through the records. And it was kind of like a community type thing where like-minded people could go to and talk about music and enjoy music and spend some time with it. And then eventually I wanted to turn it into like a bar where people, where people could also, maybe see a live DJ play, and kind of on a smaller scale, like a little bit of a bar slash smaller club that was a little bit more intimate, maybe more like a lounge. Like, that was my idea of Electric Cafe. And since I can't really do that right now, that's this Electric Cafe kind of turned into this channel here. But that was my idea of Electric Cafe. So I think on a small level, it has to be get-togethers with people of records, and maybe that's record fairs or a little bit like that. But instead of like a place where you can buy music, I think it has to be more about playing music and sharing music. I also think of record stores popping up too, and I do think those are always a great place to meet people and talk about what's going on in the area, and seeing flyers and talking to people about what kind of bands are coming down and stuff like that. So I do feel like that's kind of coming back a little bit. I wanted to thank those people who sent in a question for me to answer on this video. There was a couple questions that I have left over. I'll definitely do a part 2, but I'll need some more questions for a future video. So if you'd like to ask me a question just in general, doesn't have to be for me specifically, just a question that you want somebody's opinion on, just in general about music and music in general, just put it down below and I'll use it for a future video. Or you can email me or contact me directly and give me that question as well. That would be perfectly fine. But yeah, I'd like to do a second part to this question. But hopefully this video kind of got you thinking, and I always like to think about the current state of music and what could be better and or even it's just great memories or just my personal experiences about it, or hearing about other people's experiences related to these questions. If there's something that kind of hits home for you on these questions and you have an opinion about it, please leave a message below. I'd love to know what your thoughts are when it comes to some of the questions that I answered from my experience, but I'd love to know your experiences as well. And having said that, I want to appreciate your time and thank you for being on this video and watching it, and we'll see you on the next video.